Nithya, and he's as you can, I think some of you can, and all of you, I hope, can see him on the screen now. And so Nithya is, of course, based in Pune, and he's currently, of course, in Mumbai, talking to us from a hotel as he has to take a flight off to another city after he finishes this talk with us. We were really at IMCC, wondering what kind of a topic we should select to talk to you all. It's been quite a while since we had a seminar. I know we've had a lot of business seminars, but we thought in the current condition as things are in Myanmar, with the pandemic there, etc., we thought it would be a good idea to get someone to speak to us, and we could think of no one better than Mr. Nithya Shanti, who would talk to us today on the power within, assessing infinite strength and resourcefulness. So before I go and introduce Nithya in details to you, Nithya ji, I wanted to first share with you the audience that we have today. I was reading your your biodata, and I see you're an avid follower of meditation. You've also been a monk yourself, so I think this country is absolutely idle, and we would really love to have you here when things sort of settle down to come and also do Vipassana with a lot of people who are interested in Vipassana here in Myanmar. So IMCC, Nithya ji, is a business chamber that we started about 4 years back. And we have a lot of a good mix of Indian businessmen, some of them who've been in Myanmar for ages. And I'm not sure if someone from the Goenka family is here. I see that you had mentioned that in your biodata. So in fact, Rajul, the grandson of Guruji himself, is very much part of our group here. And I'm not very sure if he's attending it, but we had, of course, sent him an invite to attend the session today with you. So we have a good blend of Indian businessmen and Myanmar people who are attending this talk of yours today. And I'm sure we'll all immensely benefit with what you have to share with us. So a lot of people have been here in Myanmar for over 20, 30 years. And then there's a good mix of people who represent a very large Indian PSUs like, ONGC, Oil India, GAIL, State Bank of India. Then there are a lot of private sector companies also which are present here in Myanmar. And then, of course, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have been here for many years who primarily do trading in beans and pulses and steel and various other items, and of course along with our Myanmar friends. So that's and I think everyone is really looking forward to this session with you, and I'm sure after you speak we'll also have a lot of Q&A which we would like to have with you. And for the audience today, just to give you a small brief of Nithya ji, he's basically a graduate from an MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur, and since the age of 16, Nithya took to practicing meditation, and for 6 years he lived in the forest, meditating at various monasteries in Thailand, Sri Lanka, and also various parts of India and the US. In fact, I was having a chat with him a few days back, and he said that he really missed not being able to come to Myanmar, and he really wants to come and visit this beautiful country also once things become easy here. So he has, Nithya is, of course, he is very engaging. He talks to the audience through stories and encourages meditation and introspection in an atmosphere of trust. And I'm sure we will find this interaction with him very, very useful. So the way we have structured it is that Nithya ji is going to make a presentation, I understand, and he will talk to us for about an hour or so, post which we have about 30 minutes of Q&A. So after we go through the session, you're most welcome to have a Q&A session with him. So with those words, over to you, Nithya ji, and all the best. And thanks once again for taking time out to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil ji, for a very warm welcome. I really feel connected to everybody, the way you described them, and have a sense of, even though we've just barely begun, have a sense of homecoming and have a sense of I'm with people I can connect with. So today's session is, the way I see it, it's an opportunity for us to connect more deeply with ourselves, each one of us connecting with ourselves and connecting with this moment of life and the intelligence of this moment of life. And we often feel we have to think through our life, and thinking definitely has its place. But over-reliance on anything can become cumbersome. And so today I'd like us to, the beautiful phrase, resting in presence. Resting in presence. In fact, as I was sitting, we were just doing a little few technical checkups before we started. I just had a beautiful sense of my heart opening and just a lovely flow of heart energy just moving through. And it felt that I often have this feeling sometimes with certain groups, I just have the sense of, it's just going to be an effortless interaction. That's the feeling I have. So I'll share a few slides as well as we go along, but we don't have to be limited to the slides. We will keep our interaction free flowing. I'm also going to make an effort to monitor the chat box as we go along, so I can also be seeing some of your comments. All right. So one picture I wanted to start today's presentation with is this one. In fact, a friend of mine, Sukesh, just shared this picture today. He says it is the most detailed representation of a human cell to date, obtained by radiography, nuclear magnetic resonance, and cryoelectronic microscopy. And just look at how beautiful it is. This is one cell in our body. And there are anywhere between 20 to 200 trillion cells in our body. The fact that it's such a big variation between 20 and 200 trillion shows what a mystery it is. Scientists aren't sure if it's 20 trillion or 200 trillion, somewhere in between that. So I find this picture really fascinating because some of us might remember certain parts of the cell from our school years, or maybe some of you studied in college, and you can say, oh, this is that, this is the nucleus, and this is the mitochondria, or whatever. But the truth is, it's a complete mystery, isn't it? Even if you can name a few parts of it. This picture for me says so much. It's like, this is like a whole microscopic city. If you've ever been to a place called Auroville in India, they have designed the city inspired by a cell. So the aim is for it to be an international city. It already is in a way, an international, more like a township right now. Maybe one day it'll be an international city. And they've designed it inspired by a human cell. So the reason I'm starting with this picture is that for me, this represents wonder. It represents mystery. And one of my friends said something very powerful once. He said, the universe is sandwiched between order and chaos, order and chaos, order and chaos. I said, what do you mean by that? So he said, well, think about it. Currently, the most carefully we can look at the nature of the world, the subatomic particles, it just looks like complete chaos. It's just all over the place. But then if you zoom out a bit, then you come to an atom, and the atom looks pretty uniform. It's got its nucleus, it's got its electrons, it's flowing quite orderly. And then you come to a cellular level, and again, it's chaos. As we all know, everyone's talking about immunity nowadays because we're afraid of the virus. So you're afraid you'll breathe in the virus and it'll create havoc in your system. What is havoc in your system? That basically your immune cells aren't able to react in time. So that's like a war going on. That's like a war going on at a tremendous level. And then you come out to a human level, and human seems quite okay. If you don't know what's going on in their head, they seem quite okay. They seem quite peaceful. In fact, when I came back from my monk life, I noticed how people sitting in front of me seem pretty peaceful until they start talking and they start sharing, oh, this is not working at work. This is not working in my family. This is not working in my life. So my teacher used to say, nothing troubles you but your imagination. In this moment, life just is. But then we add layers of how it should be, how it could be, what's going to happen, what it means. And this is where the suffering comes in. In fact, my teacher used to walk around the monastery with a very interesting question sometimes. He would ask the monks, how are you suffering today? What a question to ask. How are you suffering today? And some monks would say, I am suffering today. Then he would say a very, in a way, a strange sentence. He'd say, step over here where it's always cool. Step over here where it's always cool. What does it mean, step over here? Step over here. Here means now. Step into the now. You've gone too much into your imaginal world. And step into here where it's always cool. Not only every layer of the universe, but every moment has an option of order and chaos. It's completely embedded within every aspect of this universe. So moving from a human level to a societal level, again, you have chaos. At a society level, there's complete chaos. Haves and have-nots, and all kinds of different ideologies. And you zoom out a bit more, you come to a planetary level. I think nothing is more peaceful than a picture of the planet from outer space. How beautiful our planet looks from outer space. If you've ever seen images, if you have the time, sometime go to YouTube and search for something called the overview effect. And the overview effect is what astronauts experience when they go into outer space. They feel this tremendous love for our planet. And they realize that all political boundaries are imaginary, things that we've made up, and they keep changing. There's nothing absolute about them. And just like if you see the cell, it has this very almost fragile membrane surrounding it. So they see our planet also like that. It's got a very fragile atmosphere. It may seem like a very thick atmosphere, actually a very fragile, very thin atmosphere. And they experience something called the overview effect. They fall in love literally with the planet. And while they may still say Indian, American, whatever, but deep down they know, no, we're just citizens of one planet. That's called the overview effect. It's a well-documented effect where, in fact, one of the astronauts, he came back and he was very surprised. He said, I experienced almost like a mystical state. I don't know what I experienced. And then one of the professors says, looks like you experienced, basically what the astronaut said was, all my free time, when I finished all my work, I would just look at the earth. Nothing was more beautiful than just looking at the earth. I would just gaze at the earth with love. So he looked up the yogic text and he said, oh, this is called the kind of a samadhi that you've experienced. So it's a form of samadhi, which is with an object. Savikalpa samadhi. So with an object, you have samadhi. So the reason I'm showing you this picture is, this is the nature of the universe. There's order, there's disorder at every level. And it's all a mystery, it's all wonder. And this cell reminds me of that. So I wanted to share this with you today. I saw this picture just today, I just loved it. So very quickly, a little bit about my journey. I was 16 years old and I was introduced to meditation. Some of you have attended meditation. Being from Myanmar, you may have meditated or you may have heard about it. I was introduced to a form of meditation which actually was preserved by Myanmar for many, many generations, Vipassana meditation. I was 16 years old and my mother took me for a 3-day that time. It was 3-day, it was a rare 3-day course. Normally it's a 10-day course. And I attended that and it was a very important breakthrough for me because I realized until that time, I was completely living within my thinking. And even for a brief glimpse in those 3 days, a brief glimpse of experiencing myself, not as thought, but as awareness. The body was allowed to be the body, the thoughts were allowed to be thoughts, feelings were allowed to be feelings. Everything was just allowed to be the way it was. And there was just a sense of witnessing. And what a tremendous freedom that was to just put down the burden. So that experience put me on a journey. I did many more meditation courses and I would also volunteer in them. I went on to do an MBA, worked in the corporate world for a short while. But my heart was still thirsting for a deeper integration of what I'd learned. And so at the age of 22, 23, somewhere around that time, I left my corporate job and I became a Buddhist monk. So for Myanmar, you're very familiar with how Buddhist monks look. So I was a monk for about 6 years in Thailand and then in Sri Lanka. And I lived in a monastery called Wat Pa Nanachat. This is in northeast Thailand. It's a forest monastery. And we practice the Vinaya quite strictly, which is the rule of the monks. So we don't use money and we eat before midday. And as you're quite familiar, there are three kinds of monks, broadly three kinds of monks. They're the city dwelling monks, take care of the village temples and the town temples. And then they're the scholarly monks. And then they're the forest monks or the meditation monks. So I was a forest meditation monk, and we would spend most of our time in secluded practice, living in small monasteries. So in my monastery, there were about 20-25 monks, and we had visitors because it was an international monastery. So we had visitors from all over the world. We'd wake up early in the morning, meditate. About 3:30 in the morning, we'd have a morning meditation. And then when the sun would rise, we'd walk to the neighboring villages, as you've no doubt seen in Myanmar. And people would be waiting out there to give us food. And so this was a daily ritual. Every morning we'd walk to the neighboring villages and we'd come back. And whatever food we had, we would share with all the other monks and the guests who were visiting our monastery. So I trained like this for about 6 years. I was in Thailand for 2 years and I was in Sri Lanka for about 3 years. I was in the forest tradition the whole time. And our teachers would say that don't rely so much on books. Don't rely so much on concepts. Reality itself will teach you everything. So learn from the trees, learn from the birds, learn from the squirrels, learn from your own mind states. Don't rely so much on books. Books are fine, but don't get overly caught up in books and knowledge. In fact, as you probably know, in the Buddha's time, it was not really a written tradition. It was an oral tradition, which means if you look at the scriptures, every sutra begins with Evang me sutang, thus have I heard. It's an oral tradition. So you pass it on through hearing. And so in the Buddha's time, you would hear the teachings, you'd memorize the teaching, you'd recite the teachings, and then you go and practice the teachings. And then as you come and clarify, did I practice it right? You go back again and practice it. So hearing the teachings, memorizing the teachings, reciting the teachings, practicing the teaching, then at some point teaching the teachings. So what we have today, the Tipitaka, which is the entire collection of the Buddha's teachings, 3 baskets, Tipitaka, 3 baskets, Vinaya Pitak, Sutta Pitak, Abhidhamma Pitak, was all a completely oral tradition, memorized tradition. It's such a huge amount of knowledge that there would be monks dedicated to certain parts of the Vinaya, the rules for the monks and nuns, certain parts of the Sutta, and certain part of the Abhidhamma. So they memorized it. So in my tradition, there was a focus also on, to some extent, memorizing, reciting the teaching, but mostly on practicing the teachings. And if you had the aptitude, then you would also be a teacher at some point. So I trained like this for about 6 years in Thailand and Sri Lanka. And some of the insights from that will also be part of what I share today. However, one of the main insights is that there is a distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, and suffering is optional. Suffering is an extra layer that we add. For example, yesterday my friend was telling me about how her mother is so afraid of getting blood test. So afraid of getting a blood test. She's very afraid of needles. So we all have pain. I don't think anybody can have a blood test without some pain. We will all have pain. But in her case, the pain is multiplied by suffering. What is suffering? It's her inner resistance to it. So it's literally a big drama in the house. You have to chase her around the house. She literally runs. You have to calm her down and sit down. And then she tenses her hand so much that what is painful anyway becomes much more painful because she's stressing herself out so much. And she's flinching so much and her muscles are so tight. So what in any case is a difficult situation is multiplied and made far more difficult because of her resistance. So suffering is experience multiplied by your resistance. So pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The Buddha says birth is difficult. Yeah. Suffering, jati pi dukkha. Old age is difficult. Jara pi dukkha. Sickness is difficult. Vyadhi pi dukkha. Maranam pi dukkham. Death is difficult. Now, why do you want to add a further layer of suffering to it? So the whole training is, how can we reduce the suffering as we go through this lifetime? So that was a training, living in, like, for example, I lived in this place. My brother had come to visit me, so he took a few photographs. So here at night time, you could hear some sounds in the bushes. Now that's just a sound, right? But then the mind starts multiplying the sound. Or is that a snake? Because this area is known for snakes. Or is that an animal coming to get me? So now how do you train yourself to realize that sound is just sound? In most cases, it's usually a small little insect. Or it's a small little lizard, forest lizard. But the sound it makes, the mind multiplies that by, oh, it's a snake coming to get me. It's another animal coming to get me. So this ability to distinguish between what's happening and our thoughts about what is happening. This, you could say, is the essence of wisdom. And we end up mixing these two sometimes. One of my teachers would say that when you believe all your thoughts, you're insane. People who believe all their thoughts become hypochondriac, become paranoid, become delusional. So you believe all your thoughts, you're insane. You believe some of your thoughts, you're considered normal. You believe few thoughts, you're wise. You don't believe a single thought, you're liberated. Because MIND, mind, stands for mostly inaccurate neurodrama. Mostly inaccurate neurodrama. So this whole journey is to shift from a thinking level, which is valid and fine, but to metacognition, the ability to witness your own thinking. Even Aristotle said, education is the ability to have a thought and not believe it. So that was a training that I went through for 6 years as a monk. And 2008, what was it, 2018? 2008, I left my monastic life. And I was drawn to explore my journey in broader ways than just a Buddhist paradigm. And it's been beautiful. I've been sharing these things with friends all over the world. Some of them have also joined the call today from 5 different sessions. So that's been my journey so far. And I'm happy to quickly answer. Of course, later on, we have a longer question answer session, but maybe just one or two, if you want to put in the chat, any question you have, I'm happy to answer 1 or 2 questions before I move ahead. I don't know if you have the ability to unmute yourself. You can also unmute yourself. I'm okay with that. And you can put it in the chat.
Drishti, can you check if there is any question?
I'm looking at the chat.
Yes, sir.
I am Sanjay Tripathi. Can we ask this verbal questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I can hear you. Okay. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much. You have given a because I have been living in Myanmar, and I am seeing what you have already experienced, and it is great to see that monks, they walk barefooted, and I also completely agree with you. Sometimes we feel pain if we don't wear our slippers, but I see that they are moving freely, and they don't actually, the pain is in your mind only, and I completely agree with you. And I am also drawn by the what you say. But there are different meditation center over here. Now they are all closed due to this COVID. You say that Vipassana is the best one. So so can I know whether they will go for this mantra meditation or this silent meditation, or maybe there are 3-4 methods. One is like you are breathing in and out. So what is I don't know whether this is the right platform to ask such questions, or can you recommend any meditation center which is here, so that I can also go and attend some of the sessions? But I completely agree with you that this meditation is the best form, and we can experience the bliss of the outside world. Sometimes I have also felt it. And whenever you are in even in jungle also, sometimes I feel I have also done some meditation in jungles also, in Bandhavgarh National Park also. But I was never afraid of tigers and lions and these. You feel they are also like you, and they can also recognize.
Great. Let me address your question. So first of all, I don't think I said Vipassana is the best. I don't believe in these things, what is best and what is worst, because what is the best laptop, what is the best phone, what is the best browser? what is the best kind of food to eat. These are all very subjective things. So there's no such objective, this is the best. And that is a kind of a bit of a conceit. We have to be careful of conceit. Even in the Buddha's times, there were monks who thought this teaching is best, this sutra is best. And this is, the Buddha said, householders fight over possessions. And so-called spiritual people fight over ditthi, views. So be wary of viewpoints, that my viewpoint is superior to your viewpoint. This is a kind of an arrogance which comes. But definitely there's a lot to learn from many different traditions. And what I would encourage you to do is, I'm not aware of the situation in Myanmar, but there are plenty, nowadays there are so many resources available, both offline and online. And just start with something simple. You can start with breath meditation. There's nothing wrong in, even though Vipassana doesn't appreciate it, but I think there's nothing wrong in mantra meditation. The tradition I went to, Thailand, Thai forest tradition, their main practice was a mantra practice. They would say Buddho. They would do all day long, they would chant Buddho, Buddho in their mind, whatever they're doing. Like if I am walking, I would say in my mind, Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. If I'm eating, Buddho, Buddho. If I'm breathing, Buddho, Buddho. And you would practice until that becomes a stable practice. Like throughout the day, the Buddha is always happening in the background. And if ever there's a doubt that how can it happen all day long, I experienced when I was in college, I fell in love with a girl and I would be thinking of her all the time. And I was like, wow, my meditation also I can't do all the time, but I'm thinking of her all the time. I'm in the class, I'm thinking of her. I'm driving home, I'm thinking of her. Like if I can think of her all the time, I can also meditate all the time. So no matter what the meditation object is, you can keep it going in the background all the time. And when that gets stabilized, that's called a kind of samadhi. When that gets stabilized, then you start asking the question, who is doing the mantra? Who is aware of the mantra? Who is aware of the breath? So this is a two-step process which happens in almost every meditation. There's a samadhi element and there's a wisdom element. There's a tranquilizing serenity element. In Buddhism, it's called samatha. And then there is a penetrative element, which is called Vipassana in Buddhism, right? So basically, it's like gathering yourself together and then transcending even what you've gathered. So return to center and go beyond the center, release the center. So I would not worry too much about getting the perfect meditation method. Whatever comes to you, if you have to, you can make a little intention, say, I'm really keen to take this inner journey. And please make the right teacher, right teaching, right tradition available to me. And I'm pretty sure, there's no doubt, life really responds to our intention, our sankalpa. And you will be guided, and start from there. In the beginning, I actually encourage people to try a few different things, not get too hung up on any one system. Try a few different things, and then you will get a sense of what works better for you. Right. Great. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I'll answer one or two more questions, and we'll go on.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Gaurav, I'd love to. Just want to see there are some people already put it in the chat. Can I just come to you in a second?
Okay.
We have Vivek has asked, why did you leave monastic life to come to the corporate life? I haven't come to the corporate life. I've just changed. I'm not a corporate person necessarily, but I did leave my monastic life. There are certain things, as a tradition evolves over 2,500 years, it takes on certain assumptions which don't necessarily match with everybody. So, for example, one assumption is just the way women are treated in Buddhism. Buddhism has a bit of a patriarchal attitude. And I don't think that's very healthy. Like, for example, a lot of women, their whole intention is, may I be born a monk in the next life. I don't think that was ever the teaching of the Buddha. So there are certain things which this is just one of the examples. There are so many other examples. So while the teachings are very powerful, the expression of the teachings may not always be in line with that. And so for that and other reasons, I felt it was appropriate for me to continue the teachings, continue learning and practicing, but not in that particular form. And then we also have Gaurav, go ahead. I think you also put a question. You can just ask it. Yeah.
Yeah, I posted the message as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
You.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nithya, for having this discussion with us. I'll start with the point which you last made, where you said while meditating in the monastery, you heard a voice and you started imagining what it could be. Now we're living in an era where there's so many things that are happening outside. Politically and in India back home, we see a lot of COVID around us, and the multiple sources of news that we read, everything points differently. Like some say it's very dangerous and very, very hard to go out and quarantine ourselves. The situation here, so my point is there's a lot of conflicting news out there. It depends on what source you're reading.
True.
And how does one start? It's very hard for us to see something for real, for what it is. So how does one try to see things for what they are, than rely on others' opinions?
Yeah,
that's my question.
That's a really good question. In fact, I was just listening to a talk recently where they were talking about, are we even capable of seeing reality? And what they found, there's some scientists, I don't know how true this is, but they were saying that species that can perceive reality the way it is tend to go extinct. So we are actually almost designed biologically to not see reality the way it is. It's a real struggle for us to even get a glimpse of what is, because how much of this is getting filtered by our own brain, and our own biochemistry. How much of reality are we actually seeing? And how much of it is our own assumption of reality? Well, one thing we can say for sure is that the more agitated I am emotionally, for example, the more distorted it gets. This much is for clear. Like if I notice in myself, if I have very strong craving or very strong aversion or very strong, indifference, then boredom, for example, then I don't see things the way they are. I tend to project a lot of things. And the more I am, like, for example, present and I'm receptive, and I don't have a very strong assumption about who you are, who I am, what life is, I'm just actually in a state of wonder, then I tend to see things a little bit more clearly. So at least that much we can agree on, that like, for example, I don't know if since you're part of this, you might be part of the business world. So in the business world, that when you're very agitated and you make a decision, chances are it's not a very good decision, In fact, there was one CEO he met. He said, when someone sends me an email that agitates me, I write a reply and I don't send it. Because I know from experience, if I send it, then typically if I go and sleep over it and I come and read it the next day, and I often feel, wow, I'm so glad I didn't send that. And then if he still feels like sending, he sends it to a friend first. And he gets the opinion of his friend. And he's found that saves him such a lot of trouble. Because in the heat of the moment when he reacts, that reaction never really does any good, right? So here's, in fact, my next slide was about this. Between stimulus and response is a gap. And that's where wisdom lives. So to answer your question, let's access that gap. What is the correct news source? What are the correct, whether we should take the vaccine or not? I don't know. But what I do know is the more I access that gap between stimulus and response, the more clarity there is within me, then intuitively the right thing tends to happen. We start accessing a different level of consciousness. I experienced this when I was a monk. It's like things would just happen. Like I would be wanting a book and I would relax my desire around it. And sooner or later, if it was meant to be the person, somebody would just come and give me that book. I would want a new flashlight. My flashlight wasn't strong enough, and I'd relax my desire. So in other words, you have a desire, but you relax around it. You don't hold it so tight. You hold it lightly. See, a desire held tightly becomes an expectation. A desire held lightly becomes an intention. And intentions don't cause so much trouble. Expectations cause trouble. Expectations, it has to be this way. You have to be, I have to be, the world has to be this way. But it is the way it is, right? So I'm not denying that I have my desires, but I'm holding them lightly, not tightly. When you hold a desire tightly, your actions become weak. When you hold your desires lightly, actions become actually strong. I remember in my football, I was in the football team in school. And during the practice matches, I was a pretty good player, one of the best players. But during the actual matches, my performance would go down a bit. Why? Because there was an expectation I've got to win and everyone's watching me. And the expectation actually reduced the power of my actions. So holding it lightly as opposed to tightly, all this can be accessed in the gap. So I don't know if I fully addressed your question, Gaurav, but let's keep going. And maybe along the way, part of it more will get addressed. And we'll also, like I said, we have time towards the end for more Q&A. So even though I haven't answered all your questions yet, just wanted to check in with all of you. Thanks, Gaurav. So these are 4 things that I found in my journey to be particularly helpful. And this is also when I work with people in the corporate world, I remind them of these 4 elements. These are the 4 elements of leading consciously and living more consciously. So it's pause and feel and intend and connect. And why these 4? Why particularly these 4 words? The power of pause is, for me, the most powerful thing that is available to us. Because that's how you access it. The previous slide, the gap. Can I go back to the previous slide? For some reason I can't, but it's all right. Oh, here we are, yeah. The gap. So the pause is what helps you access the gap. The gap between stimulus is what's happening, the events of your life, and the response, how you respond to it. And the smaller the gap, the more it tends to be a reaction. And the deeper, the longer the gap. And that doesn't have to be long, doesn't mean like years. It could even just be seconds. Even if you take a few seconds between what's happening and you respond, tends to be a higher quality response. I've noticed this in the leaders I've worked with. They tend to be less reactive and more responsive. When someone says something, they don't immediately react. They take a moment to think about it, or they'll ask a question. It's fascinating to watch. And this ability to be in presence, instead of coming from personality, you come from presence. Personality is my likes and dislikes. Presence is just witnessing. Like right now, an example of presence would be, as I'm speaking, the space in this room is not agreeing with me. The space in this room is not disagreeing with me. The space in this room just is. It's just receiving. And I could be talking about 10,000 different topics. The space in the room would still just be the way it is. The earth also does this. The earth just receives me. It doesn't judge me. Oh, today you're not being a good person. I'm not going to take you. The sun doesn't say, today you're not being good. I'll not put my sunlight on you. So the sun radiates, the earth receives, this room accepts what I'm saying exactly the way I am. And that is a shift from personality to presence. And that's what happens when you access the gap. So in a way, when you're accessing the gap, you're accessing a higher level of consciousness, a broader level of consciousness. One of my favorite stories about this is my friend Ankita Menon is a researcher from, I think, JNU in Delhi, if I'm not mistaken. She's doing a PhD, and she had gone to various villages in India to assess their water resources. And, you know, when you go to places like this, there are many different interest groups. And so when someone comes and starts studying, then some people feel threatened. Why is she studying? What does she want? So even though her intention was that, you know, we should study the water table, we should study how the water is preserved and how it's shared in the village, some people got threatened by her. And they actually convinced a person to kill her. So village being a village, the news spread, and she got to know that in the next meeting, this guy is going to come and try to kill you. So you should not go for that meeting. She said, no, I will go for that meeting. So she knows there's a threat to her life, but she still goes for that meeting. And she actually recognizes the person who's supposed to come and kill her. And she engages with him in a dialogue. Before he can even do anything, she starts talking to him. And she asks him, you know, how long have you been in this village? What's important to you in this village? And she has the courage, the audacity to talk to the person who's supposed to be her assassin. And over a 2-hour period, he realizes he's been brainwashed. Now, this is not, and I asked her, how did you get the courage to do that? Who has the courage to go for a meeting where you know that someone's supposed to assassinate you, kill you? She says, no, something just came over me and I just knew I had to do that. So it's almost like she was not operating from a personality level. She had touched a wider consciousness. Her compassion for that village, her sense of purpose was so strong, she was able to go for that meeting anyway. So this is an example of how the gap, when you pause, you access a higher level of consciousness. So wherever you are in your life, if you're getting confused, don't overthink it. Slow down. Slow down and come to the pause. When I was 16 years old and I learned meditation, this was a huge learning for me. That I'm stressed out about college, I'm stressed out about, you know, that was in school, stressed out about school, stressed out about all these different things. And I'd meditate for 15 minutes, just watch my breath. Can you watch your breath? Just 2 or 3 breaths right now. And like this, just sitting for 10, 15 minutes. And when I get up from there, I feel like, wow, it's not strangling me the way it was earlier. It's not as stressful anymore. So how come? It was just 15 minutes back, it was super stressful, but now it's not so stressful anymore. So you see, it's not what's happening. It's not what's happening in your life. It's your relationship with what's happening. Stress is not caused by the events of our life. Stress is caused by our thoughts about the events of our life. It's not what's happening, it's your thoughts about what's happening. So when you pause, you can touch a dimension that is prior to assumptions and thoughts, and you can actually become one with life. Goenka ji has a beautiful teaching. He talks about karta bhav or bhokta bhav, which is the first level. I'm the doer, I'm the experiencer. And then drashta bhav, I'm the witness. So karta bhav would be, I'm giving this talk. Bhokta bhav with me, I hope you like it. I hope you appreciate me. And I'll feel very good if you appreciate me and be very upset if you don't like my talk. This will be karta bhav and bhokta bhav. Drashta bhav is like, right now I'm witnessing myself giving this talk. And you're witnessing yourself listening to this talk. You're not sure if you agree, you don't disagree. You're just here, you're just receiving it. It's like a cool mountain breeze that's blowing. And whatever adjustment has to happen is happening. If nothing has to happen, nothing's happening. That's fine. So this is drashta bhav, witnessing. From the doer to the witness. And as you go along, even that thin distinction between the witnesser and the action, even that is proven to be just another assumption. And suddenly it's just life. Right now, life is talking to life. Right now, something is happening within awareness. In India, this is called Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is consciousness, and Shakti is the dance. Can the admin just check? I'm getting some background sound. Maybe you can just mute some of the other people so we don't have background sound. So Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is that which knows. The principle of Shiva is that which knows. And Shakti is the content of the knowing. So Shiva and Shakti, that which knows and the content of the knowing are found to be one. They're not separate. So that is the power of pause. And so pause we practice by throughout the day, taking short moments to return to presence, shift from personality into presence. So for example, before this meeting, I was just quiet for a bit. When you ask a question, instead of trying to race to think of an answer, I can be quiet for a bit. At the end of the meeting, I can be quiet for a bit. Quiet for a bit means your eyes can even be open. You don't even have to close your eyes. But inwardly settle, drop the idea of being this and that, wanting this or that. This is also known as being an agenda-less presence. Who are you without your agendas, even for a few seconds? Any agenda I have that I hope you like my talk, I hope you get transformed from this talk, I hope it's a relevant talk. Any such agenda, what happens if I drop it, even for a second? And now life is communicating with life. Whatever needs to be shared gets shared. So this is the first principle, it's called pause. And then from pause, we feel. Fully feeling our feelings is very healing. There are these two skills which we'll have to learn on a path of conscious living. One is the skill of stepping back. You could call it detachment, stepping back, witnessing. And the other is the skill of stepping in, embodying. And both are important. In fact, this is how we break our hypnotic trance. We step back and we step in. We step back and we step in. Step back means you witness. Step in means you embody and you fully feel it. As you step back and step in again and again, you're less and less fooled by what's happening. You're less and less hypnotized by what's happening. You're able to cut through your own mind, mostly inaccurate neurodrama. So in the Vipassana tradition, which some of you mentioned before, I was part of here, the whole skill was you come to awareness and you also notice the changing phenomena. Thoughts are changing, sensations are changing. All experiences, all sensory experiences are changing. You witness it. You don't just make a mental note, oh yeah, it's changing. You actually experience the change. Right now I can see the curtain is swaying. That's change. A bird is flying in the sky. That's change. I'm hearing the hum of the air conditioning. That's change. A slight twitching in my muscle in my left arm. That's change. Experiencing change, not just thinking about change, experiencing change. So that's the element of feel. And as we learn to pause and as we learn to feel, instead of making an intention, a very purified intention arises by itself. My teacher used to say, Dukhi dekh man karuna jage, aisa brahma vihar ho. Sukhi dekh man mudita jage, aisa brahma vihar ho. Sabke prati maitri jage, aisa brahma vihar ho. Har sthiti mein upeksha rahe, aisa brahma vihar ho. What does it mean? When the balanced mind encounters suffering, the natural intention is karuna. Karuna means compassion. When the balanced mind encounters someone who's doing well, instead of jealousy, the natural response is mudita, I rejoice in your happiness. I'm so happy for you. And I wish you more of that. When the balanced mind encounters anyone, a natural sense of friendship. All are my friends, I've got no enemies. When the balanced mind encounters any ups and downs of life, equanimity, balance of mind, understanding everything changes. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. Nothing remains the same. Ups and downs are inevitable in life. And you become like that surfer who is able to surf the waves, all the ups and downs, instead of getting washed away by the waves, surf those waves of life. Life actually surfs the waves, not actually you doing. And the intentions get purified. The intentions go from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic. Tamasic is very heavy and dull and maybe, divisive. And rajasic is very ambitious. And I want to get somewhere and achieve something, which is also fine. We have to go through that. And then you realize after achieving lots and lots and lots of things, you realize, but I'm still thirsty. No matter how much I achieve, there seems to be more to achieve, right? So at some level, you start asking, what am I really trying to achieve? It turns out it's simple things. It's simple things like peace and connection and joy. You realize, instead of just doing things hoping to get the peace and the joy, how about I start with joy? How about I start with peace? How about I start whatever I'm looking for at the end of my so-called materialistic journey or spiritualistic journey? These are all concepts, but whatever I'm looking for at the end, what if I start with that? Begin with end in mind. Somebody was asking me in the comments, what's your purpose? My purpose is to do what makes me come alive. In fact, this evening I have a session on purpose, and there's a whole 2-hour session I'm doing on purpose. But there's so many perspectives on purpose. But what makes me come alive? Because life wants to be alive. So what makes me come alive? So doing whatever I'm doing as wholeheartedly as possible. If I'm speaking now, let me speak. If I'm listening now, let me listen. If I'm eating now, let me eat. If I'm sad now, let me really experience sadness. Don't run away from it. Experiencing life in its fullness. My purpose right now is to speak. A little while later, my purpose might be to be quiet and listen to one of you. Whatever is happening, that's the purpose. Doesn't have to be any other purpose. And then the first 3, pause, feel, and intend, are internal. And connect. Connect is recognizing that the so-called other is just a projection. There's a wonderful teacher, Neville, and he had a powerful quote. Everyone is you pushed out. All the parts of me I've not embraced, I've pushed them out. I've made them my family. I've made them my community. I've made them my government. I've made them the world. It's me pushed out. It's the parts of me that I've not, because the more I embrace it, and the more I realize this is just me pushed out. Yatha drishti tatha shrishti. The outer world is the reflection of my inner world. I have never ever experienced the outer world. I've only experienced my thoughts and assumptions about the outer world. When I'm in love, the whole world looks nice. When I just got promoted, when my company is done well, the whole world looks like a really cool place. But when the opposite happens, then the whole world looks like a disastrous, terrible place. I'm not experiencing the world. I'm experiencing my little pocket of the world, my little concept of the world. So connect. At the level of connection, it is, what is it like to really get how you see the world? And that's love. Love is to meet you without your stories. So connection with self, connection with other, connection with life. Another way I summarize this is, it's living well and loving well and dying well. That could be a good high-level summary of what we're talking about here. Let's learn some simple practices. I'll look at your question later, Gaurav. This is a good question. We'll come to it at the end. 1 moment meditation. So throughout the day, if you can just start with maybe a minute. So just try this with me. Eyes can be open or closed. And for the next minute, I want you to be aware of your natural breathing. Let's start. Just be aware of your breath. Feel the in-breath. Feel the out-breath. When your mind wanders, come back to the breath. Feel the breath. Take a nice deep breath. And that was a 1-minute meditation. So short moments of resting in clarity, repeated many times, become continuous. We are never experiencing the outer world. We are only experiencing our version of the outer world. So the more we come to inner stillness, inner clarity, then your actions tend to be more accurate, more precise, more helpful, more beneficial, more wholesome. I found this lovely slide. And it says, a scientifically controlled study conducted by German researchers in the University of Kassel has shown that while the chest area of an average person emits 20 photons of light per second, someone who meditates on their heart center and sends love and light to others emits an amazing 100,000 photons per second. That is 5,000 times more than the average human being. Numerous studies have also shown that when these photons are infused with a loving and healing intent, their frequency and vibration increases to the point that they can literally change matter, heal disease, and transform negative events. So with whatever is going on in your life and whatever is going on in the world, if you're going to react with fear, you will have very little influence. And if you're going to respond with love, then that very same situation becomes like a medicine. One of my teachers used to say, it's all good medicine. If you see life events as medicine, it changes your reaction to them. And you decide to, instead of seeing how bad it can be, you say, okay, this is the mud. What's the lotus that will emerge from this? No mud, no lotus. Again and again in this world, mud leads to lotus. Most of the comforts we enjoy today have come out of scientific breakthroughs that were forced upon us due to World War I and World War II. The pain of World War I and World War II is the benefits we enjoy today. The crisis of a mother's pregnancy is the birth that we enjoy and celebrate today. So life is like this. It's folded with chaos and order throughout. I'd like you to bring your attention to your heart for the next minute. And in whatever way you know how, just radiate good wishes, radiate loving wishes to yourself, your loved ones, the people you work with, and the whole world. A cool breeze is blowing through your heart. If a part of you is resisting this, also bless and love that part of you. So go for another 10 seconds. Very nice. The quality of our life is not the quality of our circumstances. The quality of our life is the quality of our consciousness. This is a huge realization. It's not the events of my life. It's my thoughts about the events of my life. Let me share just a few more slides and then we can shift into more of an interactive mode. So this is a nice method you can use. It's a Japanese method called Jin Shin Jitsu. And Jin Shin Jitsu is a method where you can harmonize your body by just holding your fingers. So during the day when nothing else is happening, just hold, like you can do it in the morning when you wake up, for example, just hold your thumb with the other hand, any hand, doesn't matter. And the thumb represents worry. So as you're holding your thumb, just taking 2 or 3 breaths here. Maybe feeling the pulse in your thumb, if you can feel it. And this is known to reduce worry. And similarly, if you hold the index finger, just hold it not too tight and not too loose, somewhere in between. And you take about 3 breaths here. This is known to reduce fear. Feel the pulsation in your index finger if you can. Come to your middle finger. Middle finger represents anger. This is all designed to equilibrate your inner being. Take about 3 breaths here. You can always do more. 3 is just the minimum. You can even hold each finger for a minute or longer if you like. You might feel a pulsing sensation, which is very nice. And come to your ring finger. Ring finger represents sadness. Take 2 or 3 breaths here. And come to the little finger, the pinky finger. That represents trying too hard, feeling like you're not good enough. And again, 3 breaths here. See if you can feel a clear pulsing sensation throughout the little finger. And then the middle of the palm, you can just hold it like this or like this, whatever feels nice. I like to hold it like this. Just touch the middle of the palm, which kind of integrates the whole being, the whole body. And if you feel like, you can continue with the other hand while I'm doing the rest of the presentation. Just hold each finger for about 3-4 breaths. And the way to remember what is the formula end worry fast. Worry is the thumb, F-A-S-T. So fear is index finger, anger is middle finger, sadness is the ring finger, and trying too hard is the little finger. Beautiful practice from Japan called Jin Shinjutsu. And like this, if you start your day with 36 breaths, 3 breaths per finger, middle of the palm, and then the other hand, 3 breaths per finger, middle of the palm. That will be a very nice equilibrating thing. You can do it in the start of the day, end of the day, and during the day in a meeting, nothing else is happening. With your hand below the table, you can just do this. Very simple, very calming, very powerful method. There's more to Jin Shinjutsu, but this is like the basics. You can always study it online. My friend Alexis wrote a beautiful book called The Art of Jin Shin. You can look that up if you're interested in learning more. 3 gates of speech will help us because a lot of our suffering comes from unskillful speech. In fact, as a monk, we had 227 rules. Almost all of them could be broken just by speech. That's how powerful speech is. So I sometimes wonder how much of my monk training was just speech training. And you're trained to check, is it true? What you're going to say, is it true? What you're going to say, is it kind? What you're going to say, is it even necessary? And so the first gate is closed. If it's not true, or at least if you're not sure it's true, then say, I'm not sure this is true. That's true. Is it kind? Is it really helpful? Kind doesn't always mean you have to be super sweet and sugary. Sometimes even giving feedback to a friend and letting them know that a certain behavior of theirs doesn't land very well. That can also be kind, but it has to do with intention. If you're doing it to make them feel bad about themselves, then of course it's not kind. But if you're really doing it genuinely to help them, support them, that intention makes all the difference. The coach can scream at their players. They say in the army that the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So the drill sergeant is screaming and maybe even abusing his lieutenants or whatever it is, soldiers. But behind that is the intention that, sweat now, you'll bleed less later on. So kindness is not always what we imagine, but they should be in our middle of our heart, there should be kindness. That's what makes all the difference. And is it even necessary? Not everything needs to be said. A lot of energy is wasted in meaningful chatter. So can you have more economy in your words? Is it really necessary to say what you're going to say? As this happens, automatically mind training also happens, because speech is the other flip side of the coin for your thoughts. As you become mindful of your speech, you become mindful of your thoughts. Along with speech, we can also be better listeners. It's a good part of conscious living. Pause, question, reflect. PQR. Pause, question, reflect. When someone says something, pause. Don't be in such a rush to respond. Take a second, take 2 seconds, take a breath. Let it settle. Feel the impact of what they've just said. And then share impact. When you say that this is what happens in me, this is how it affects me. These are the questions that come up. Have I understood you? Do you feel understood? There's a whole field of study called authentic relating, which is all about the alchemy of speaking authentically, listening deeply, and questioning with a mindful of wonder and curiosity. And for me, this is meditation and conversation. Conversations can become meditation if you practice things like this. You slow down. In fact, if you want the summary of it, just slow down. Slow down. The more you slow down, the more you access the gap. The more you access the gap, the deeper the conversation, the more meaningful the conversation. One of my aunts had called up my cousin and began shouting on the phone, "You don't care about me. You don't love me. What happened? You haven't come to meet me. It's been 3 months. You don't care about me. You haven't even called." My cousin can say, "But you could also have called. You also have a phone. You could also have come and met." But she knows that's not going to work, because that would just be reaction. So she says, "Oh, you're missing me, aren't you?" See how skillful she is. "You're missing me, aren't you? Oh, I'll come and meet you. Don't worry." So she looked past the surface level anger. Instead of reacting to the anger, behind every action is a positive intention. This is how transformation can happen. Behind every action in this world, no matter what the action is, there's a positive intention. Person wants to be happy. Person assumes doing that will make them happy. Even someone who wants to steal something, the assumption is it'll make me happy. With the powerful story of a man who, it's a true story. He comes out of a New York subway. He's getting out into the alleyway, and a boy comes to him, takes out a knife and says, "Give me your money." So he takes out his wallet and gives it to the boy. The boy is about to run away. And the man says, "Hey kid, it's kind of cold. You want my jacket as well?" The boy is like, "What? No one who does that. Who says when you're being robbed, take a little more?" So he comes back, but now his energy has changed. He's like, "Give me the jacket." He gives the jacket. And the man says, "I was about to go and have something to eat. You want to join me?" The boy is really amazed. "I'm stealing stuff from you. You want to take me out to eat?" So anyway, he relaxes enough, and they go actually, and they have something to eat, and they have a profound conversation. And then at the end of that, the man says, "I would love to treat you, but you got my wallet." The boy gives the wallet back. He said, "Can I ask for one more thing? Can I have your knife?" You see, transformation happens like this. It happens through slowing down and connecting to the deeper intention. We don't know what's making that child steal, right? If you can look past the surface behavior, that's where transformation happens. Behind every action is a positive intention. But how can you access that if you're not in touch with your own inner stillness? You will always be reactive. If you're operating from a personality level, you will forever be reactive. Personalities don't love, they want something. Only in presence we feel our oneness with others. And in that oneness, there can be genuine transformation. So take care of yourself, and you'll be able to take care of others as well. Self-care for selfless care. 3 mantras I want to share with you. GFD, gratitude-filled day. So people who come for my sessions, we learn to say, no matter what happens, we learn to say, how wonderful, how wonderful. And I give them lots of examples. If you miss your flight, how wonderful. What's wonderful about that? Well, maybe there's another flight to take. It's like, how can we assume that we should have been there at that time? If you come home, the kids are messed up with their room. How wonderful. I've got kids, they're having fun. So how wonderful is the way of shifting from always what's wrong, what's missing, into there's something beautiful about this as well. I was, in my recent retreat, we had an expert in yoga. He's a PhD in yoga. He's studying many different forms of yoga. He said something fascinating. He said, whenever you do an asana, a yoga posture, which hurts, you can be sure there's another part of your body that's loving it. When it hurts in one part, there's another part that's loving it. Are you going to focus on the hurt, or are you going to focus on the loving it? He says this is true for not only every asana, it's true for everything in your life. And the real skill is the skill of attention. Where are you going to give your attention? Are you going to focus on what's hurting, or are you going to focus on the part that's feeling right? That's the power of skillful attention. So how wonderful. Gratitude-filled days. Cancel. Whenever you have a thought that pulls you down, cancel, like a virus thought. Disastrous thought, disastrous result. Negative thought, negative result. Positive thought, positive result. Miraculous thought, miraculous result. So whenever you have a negative or disastrous thought, just inwardly say cancel. I don't want to believe this thought. It's not helping. I'm not good enough. You're not good enough. How did that thought help anybody? Cancel. Second good mantra to remember. And third good mantra is rule number 6. I learned this from Benjamin Zander. Benjamin Zander says, remember only one rule, rule number 6. What's rule number 6? Don't take life so seriously. Don't take life seriously, but life is serious. Yeah, but what evidence do you have? Today in school, what you were crying about, 10 years later, 20 years later, you laugh about the same thing. So don't take life so seriously. Remember to smile, remember to laugh, and do your best in every situation. Don't take yourself so seriously to begin with. All our problems have come because we've taken everything so seriously. So JFD, joy-filled day. So 3 of them are, we have grateful day, gratitude-filled day, complaint-free day, CFD, and JFD, joy-filled day. So 3 mantras to remember. How wonderful. Cancel. Rule number 6, don't take life so seriously. The people say, what are the other rules? If it's rule number 6, there are no other rules. There are no other rules, but it's called rule number 6. Don't take life so seriously. So people who come for my sessions end up learning these 3 rules. And this is another wonderful teaching from Hawaii called Ho'oponopono. And they say that anything in this world can be healed if you take full responsibility for your responsibility, how you're responding to what's happening. If you take full responsibility, 100% responsibility, and you practice forgiveness, love, and gratitude. So the idea is full responsibility. Yatha drishti tatha shrishti. I'm not experiencing the world. I'm experiencing my projection of the world. Because what I focus on expands. See, right now you only have news of what's happening in India, Myanmar, and the rest of the world. But what if the news agencies began telling you what's happening in Jupiter and happening in the next solar system, in the next galaxy, and the next galaxy beyond that? I mean, you would have no end to bad news. How much are you going to worry? Will you have a single moment of rest in this lifetime? But also with all the chaos, there's also a lot of amazing things that are happening. Amazing things are happening. But the news media will not often cover that because we are designed to give an importance to the negative. When I lived in Sri Lanka, there was the perception of how much violence there is in Sri Lanka, how much there is a fight between that time the LTTE and the government. But that was not my experience. I was living in Sri Lanka. It was not as bad as the news media made it seem. They didn't talk about all the peaceful, beautiful things that were happening. So I would not trust news media to give us the full perspective on the world. There are many amazing, beautiful things happening, creative things that are happening all the time. And while resources are definitely limited, resourcefulness is unlimited. We need to access these difficult times, make us more resourceful. If we can come into our pause, if we can feel our feelings, if we can have a clear intention, it's going to make you more resourceful. So full responsibility. And you keep saying, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. This is the mantra for Ho'oponopono. What does it mean? No matter what's happening, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Why? Because I projected this. Because I have certain belief systems that are creating suffering for me. So I'm sorry for believing these low quality stories. Please forgive me. I love you. And I thank you. Who are you saying this to? You're saying it to yourself. You're saying it to the situation. You're saying it to the other person. You're saying it to life. In fact, it doesn't matter who you're saying it to. It's more about activating that state of consciousness of full responsibility and complete forgiveness, forgiving. I'm grateful for the way things are. My teacher says, forgiveness is the recognition that what you thought happened didn't. You challenge your notion, you challenge your assumption about what's right and wrong. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you, and I thank you. and repeating these mantras over and over again. This is a powerful teaching called Ho'oponopono. You can study it more. Look for it online. Good. So I think I'm going to pause here now and just come towards one of my last slides. How wonderful. And yeah. Good. So let me now come back to all of you. Let's spend the next 20 minutes or so taking some questions. You can either put them in the chat menu or you can unmute yourself. Let me see what some of the questions I missed. So Gaurav has asked, on purpose, if one believes we embrace what's happening with us, how do we have the power to change our scenario? If we accept to be sad, then how do we have the power to become happy again? How do we change our destiny? Yeah, so it's a combination of both. It's a combination of fully embrace and accept. Like I said, step out, step in, step back, step in. Both are required. You have to step back and witness, oh, right now sadness is happening, but not to just dissociate and go into some other world. Know it, but then also step into it, feel it. Know it and feel it. Know it and feel it. And something gets processed over there in that process. This is a mental thing that, okay, then what will happen? Then I'll get, this is a mental way of thinking. This is a conceptual way of thinking. Oh, if I accept it, then I'll just be sad forever. That's not the way it works. If you actually feel that sadness, certain energy is released, which is not released when you're just thinking about it. When you get into, like, when I just get into my body, get into this moment, then I'm tapping into a different state of consciousness. And so many stories of this, so many examples of this, that what seemed to be a intractable problem just gets resolved. I mean, by now, all of you have lived enough of life to know that what seems terrible, 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 a disease or financial challenge or political challenge or whatever challenge, actually it comes, it gets really tight, and then by itself it disbands. And it comes and it gets really tight and it disbands. Have you not lived life enough times by now? Have you not had this experience enough times by now to understand this process? But again, it's going to challenge us. So when there's nothing to do, then my teacher says, do nothing. When there's nothing to do, do nothing. Wait for the clarity to emerge. Don't push so much, right? Learn to have a little patience. When there's something to do, do it with your whole heart. When there's nothing to do, do nothing. How to do nothing? Well, you'll actually still be doing something. It's just that you don't push it, right? So right now, I'm just speaking. So you'll still be doing something. You'll be breathing, you'll be speaking, there'll be some thoughts flowing. But this whole sense, I've got to push for a certain outcome to come. Let that clarity emerge from the no mind state instead of overthinking it. Just come to that pause. Remember these 4 things. Pause. How do you pause? Just like we paused many times during this session today, we paused for a minute. We came to our breath. We came to our heart. We repeated words like, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you and thank you. That's an example of pause. That's an example of doing nothing. And then from there, you feel it. And from the feeling, some intention gets germinated, born. The beautiful thing is when you're coming from pause and feel, the intention that germinates, it doesn't feel like you're creating the intention. It's creating itself. So it's actually nishkam karam. It's like you don't have any desire. It's like it's forming by itself. It's happening by itself. So there's no karma involved over there when it comes by itself. Like spontaneously, Brishti had a desire to invite me, and she messaged me, and I reflected and I got a yes. And then one thing led to the other, and we announced it, and some of you felt called to join. And then all of you have joined. Today we have what? We have over 70 people on this call, and there'll be many more on YouTube. And it's just happened, right? Who's making this happen? Certain thoughts, certain events led Brishti to invite me, and for me to say yes, and for all the things to fall in line. It's a happening. We assume we are making it happen. Go back to my original slide of the cell. How much of that cell are you making happen? Even one of those cells, 200 trillion cells. Even one of those cells you're making happen. We have a big assumption we make things happen, actually. Thoughts come and go, feelings come and go. So this is perhaps the most important question. Who am I? What is this? And there's an assumption that we know, but actually we don't know. We are the knower. And the knower does not have an identity. The knower is not limited to any quality whatsoever. The knower just is. And so whenever we get lost in the thoughts, then we are in the illusion. And we come back to presence, then we are awake within the dream. So glimpse after glimpse after glimpse, that's the journey. Glimpse after glimpse after glimpse. Short moments of resting in clarity, repeated many, many, many times, becomes continuous. If you accept the worries, fears, sadness, anger, trying hard, release them into the violet light of the crystalline light of God. Yeah, why not? Can we? Yeah, why not do that? That's one way of doing it. Why not? But if you don't do nothing, nothing will ever happen. Then what? You just sit and wait. How can something happen if you do nothing? Roshni, I know you, so this is the wrong question for you to ask, because in your case, things are happening all the time anyway. So in the so-called doing nothing, it's like you are adding nothing. The doing is still happening. Breathing is happening. There are trillions of cells doing their own thing. The whole universe is operating perfectly well. It's just that you stop putting the spanner in the works. And in fact, things actually go better than before. So get out of your own way. That's the main thing. That's what we mean by doing nothing. Any workable solution to control anger that you can suggest? You know, anger is actually fermented love, Ashish. Because behind anger is some fear. You think about why are you angry? If this keeps on happening, then there is some kind of like if people keep talking like this, behaving like this, doing like this, something will happen. There's a fear that should not happen. And behind that fear is some kind of an assumption that this life should be more like this. It should not be like this, it should be like that. And behind that request is nothing but love. So behind anger is love. And you may have to do some little bit of digging to figure out what is behind the mask of anger is the fear. Behind the mask of fear is an unmet request. Behind the mask of the unmet request is nothing but love. So I wouldn't want to control anger. I would instead meet anger. In fact, take out the word anger also. It's a kind of restlessness. It's an energy that's, it's a hot energy. It's a powerful movement in your system. And meet that. Can you just meet it for 30 seconds? Can you meet it for 1 minute? Can you just contain it? Just be with it for a minute. Breathe with it. Feel it. Not just judge it immediately. What's behind this? Instead of saying, oh, they shouldn't, but what's behind this? Where am I feeling violated? What's happened? Certain value, something that I value at some level is getting threatened. That's why there's anger. And every conflict in this world is a value conflict. Every conflict in your family is a value conflict. Every conflict in your community, in your country, in the world, every conflict is a value conflict. We have different values. And this is part of our hypnotic trance, that we believe my values are better. I believe my values are better than your values. But how can I be so sure that my values are better than your values? Let me just live my values. The way out is you live your values. My prescriptions for others were always meant for myself. When I start trying to apply what I want the rest of the world to apply, then I realize, my God, it's not. Giving talks like this is easy, but applying talks like this, that's where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? If I was to apply everything I'm saying, I would have no expectations from any of you, because I realize how much work it is, but how much also deep fulfillment there is in that. And as I change, my whole world changes, because my whole world is an extension of me. Like I said, everything is me pushed out. I've pushed out all these ideas about who you are, who I am, who the world is. I don't know, I don't have a clue about any of this, all these assumptions. So like this, you start questioning your assumptions, the anger reduces, the frustration reduces. There will be a value conflict, and you realize, God, grand overall design, every value is valid in some sense. When you can see that every value is valid in some sense, then the anger reduces. And you can, when I understand your point of view, I can see point of view, my point of view, your point of view, that point of view. Point of view, viewing point. You shift from knowledge to wisdom. Knowledge is a point of view. Wisdom is a viewing point. Only when you shift from point of view to viewing point can the anger go away. You said, that's also, I never saw it that way. That's another way of looking at it. This man was very angry with this woman who had just entered the train, and her children were running all over the place. And he finally shouts at her, ma'am, control your children. What's wrong with you? Our journey is being totally disturbed by your children. Can't you be a responsible parent? And she's woken up from a trance. Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry. My husband's in hospital. He has advanced cancer. My mind was with him. You see, he did not have the full information. He did not know her husband's in hospital with advanced cancer. So we only judge because we have partial information. If you had the full story, it would be impossible for you to judge anyone or anything. If anger takes an ugly form, how do you go about it? Well, it takes whatever form it has to take. And, how do you grow? You will have, growth is not always so neat and clean. Growth will be unpleasant sometimes. Pause, feel, intend, and connect. Pause is slow down. Yes, it's taken an ugly form. You slow down. You feel whatever's arising in you. You feel the impermanence of that. You feel the whatever texture of that. Your intention. What's the intention? May there be peace and harmony here. May there be peace and harmony here. Like that man who's getting his wallet stolen. Instead of getting reactive and fearful, he's like, oh, this poor kid. He's like my son. Son, do you want a jacket? Do you want my jacket? You see, his intention is compassionate. Come have a meal with me. It's a whole different way of thinking. And then you connect by the way you speak and the way you listen. Connection happens. What to do so our anger for others can be considered as love by them and not anger. It's not about them, it's about you. They will consider whatever they consider. They may or may not consider it as love. You have to, in your own being, you have to process your anger. What's the fear behind my anger? What's the unmet request behind my fear? What's the love behind that? So this is your sadhana, Sachin. It's not for somebody else. How can you convince other people? But you can have a sankalpa like Benjamin Zander, one of my favorite teachers. He says his idea of success is being surrounded by people with shiny eyes. What a powerful definition of success. Wherever I go, may I be surrounded by people with shiny eyes. Very beautiful intention. So when I come home and people have shiny eyes, I'm successful. If I come home and the shine goes from their eyes, that's not a success. So people grow on the border of support and challenge. So we do have a role to challenge them, but we also have a role of supporting. How do you challenge them? You see a greater potential. How do you support them? You accept them the way they are. If you're more into seeing greater potential all the time, but you're not accepting people the way they are, that will not work. If you're so much into accepting people the way they are, you see nothing beyond, they're not going to grow. And if you have these two, but you're impatient, it's not going to happen. So if you want to overcome this anger, you need three things. You need to accept people exactly the way they are. Why? Because that's the way they are. You can keep on arguing till the cows come home, nothing changes. So you accept people exactly, accept yourself exactly the way you are. See a greater, higher, broader, wider possibility, have a vision. The Buddha saw a saint in Angulimala, the serial killer. He saw a saint in him. He accepted him the way he is, a man who'd killed 999 people. He saw in him a greater possibility and he never gave up. And over the next few months, Angulimala actually became an arahant, fully enlightened being. This is incredible. And you may or may not be able to be at the Buddha's level, but you can start at your own level. Right? Start where you are and do it to the extent you can. Yeah, pause appears to be. Pause is I would say the most powerful tool I can give you is pause. Because more than relying on my wisdom, you rely on your wisdom. How do you access your wisdom? You learn to pause, you slow down. How do you slow down? You come to your sensory experience. What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? The breath. What's happening now? Get out of concepts into reality. Reality is kinder than the stories we tell. One of my teachers, Byron Katie, says this. Reality is kinder than the stories we tell. Nothing troubles you but your imagination, actually. Yes, we're not denying that there are challenges in the world, but aren't you multiplying them in your head? And is it making any difference by multiplying them in your head? How is it making it any better? So we do our best and we leave the rest. What I focus on expands. And in any given situation, I can focus on fear, I can focus on love. We saw that lovely slide earlier. What happens when you focus on love? Are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? It depends on where you're focusing. How do you deal with emotions when you lose something? I mean, a thing, materialistic thing, you're angry. You feel like you should have kept it in a safer place, but now you can't help it. It's lost. How do you get over this? My teacher said that consider every glass like it's already broken. He said, why? It's not broken yet. Yeah, but one day it'll be broken. So you have to learn to relate, like my beautiful laptop. I might lose it. It might be stolen, it might break, it might get outdated. So I will use my laptop with a lot of love and care, but I know that this is not permanent. My own body, I will take care of it, but I have to remember Buddha says every single day, remember, subject to old age, subject to sickness, subject to death. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing will become otherwise, will be separated from me. The only inheritance I have is my intention, my sankalpa, is my actions. There is no other real inheritance I have. Everything else is going to be taken away from me. I only carry from this world the momentum of my consciousness. So why not make that momentum of consciousness wholesome, kind, maitri, karuna, mudita, upeksha, loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity. That's a good momentum of mind to carry forward. That's a good inheritance to take forward. And you can keep doing, you can be in the business world. You're not become a monk for this. You're a business world, you're a teacher, you're a parent. And you practice pause and feel and intend and connect. You pause by getting present. You allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. You fully feel your feelings. These two, stepping back and stepping in, stepping back and stepping in. Pause is stepping out. Feel is stepping in. Step out, step in, step out, step in. And an intention is born. It's not your intention, it's life's intention. It's Keval Darshan, life intent. And a vision is born, a certain enthusiasm comes through you and it moves through you. And you will gather, you'll magnetize around you the right people, the right resources. It's like a seed. They say that the tree is in the seed. The tree is not in the seed. The seed is a dream. And the dream magnetizes water and minerals. And from that magnetizing effect of that seed, the tree is born. So your intention magnetizes the right people around you and you connect. And as you connect, you share your gifts, they share their gifts. And so you pause, pausing is superconscious mind. Feeling is subconscious mind. Intention is conscious mind. And connection is our working together, interconnecting and awakening the larger intelligence that is the V space. Instead of the me space, we come to the V space. And the healing happens at a community level. From the innermost level to the community level, this is how we heal our local universe. And it goes from an incoherent state to a coherent state. Just like in this call today, to some extent, we have gone from an incoherent state to a more coherent state. Like this, each one of us has a capacity to do this. How do we walk away from others' anger or keep listening when we cannot give back? Is it the fear that holds us back? So Dimpy, don't make a formula out of this. Walk away or keep listening. This is a formula. This is dead. This is history. I want you to step into the mystery. So in that moment, what is needed? In that moment, maybe they need a glass of water. In that moment, maybe they need to be listened to. In that moment, genuinely, you may have to actually say, okay, pause. Let's reconvene 10 minutes from now, 10 hours from now, 10 days from now. I need to process what you just said. So instead of you deciding right now, I say, trust that moment. And in that moment, what needs to happen? Right. And maybe you have to actually get angry back. I mean, I'm not afraid of anything. You get angry back. And then both of you have a real, for the first time in years, you have a proper, really, you really talk about what's really going on here, right? And then it settles. Who knows what the answer is? I'm not afraid of all human emotions will be experienced. And there is a part of you that's untouched by any of that. My name is very beautiful, actually, Nithya Shanti. Nithya is unchanging and Shanti is peace. And the real teaching that all the great masters are pointing to is Nithya Shanti, that unchanging peace. No matter what movie plays, the screen is unaffected. There's the part of you that's unaffected. No matter what anger, fear, animosity, lust, craving, jealousy arises, there's a part of you that's unaffected. And the more clearly you can recognize that, then you are fit to play this game of life without getting bitten so badly by it. So that's my little bit for today. I'd like to bring it back to Sunilji.
Thank you so much, Nithyaji. I think it was a wonderful session. I think extremely thought-provoking. And I think some of the things you mentioned, I think each one of us to really take a big pause, to really absorb and really understand how, we should build that in our daily lives. Because each of the, what I would call them as the pearls of wisdom you spoke, is something that we need to really pause and understand deeply. So thank you very much. And I think what was very interesting is the way you wove the whole story around, building small stories and anecdotes. And I think that's what really stays with all of us. So thank you very much indeed, Nithya ji, and also thanks to all the members who attended for your lovely questions that you all asked. I think that also helped all the other listeners in a way. And Brishti, may I request that on behalf of IMCC, we give a small token of appreciation to Nithya ji for attending this. Can I have the virtual certificate? Yes, so that we can hand that over to Nithya ji. And we hope that sometime in the near future, you make a trip and IMCC and all of us here in the Indian community will be very happy to host.
I'd love to come and receive that. Yeah.
So can we have it? IT is there? Admin, can you just put up that certificate, please?
There
it goes. So thank you so much, Nithya ji, for the lovely presentation. We really appreciate your taking time off and being with us, and we hope that we can do this again sometime in the near future. And thank you all members from IMCC and various other associations who attended today's seminar. I hope it was very useful, and please be in touch. Please be safe, and God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nithya.
Thank you. Best wishes. Thank you, everybody. Be well.
Thank you.
Lots of love. Chali, namaste.